Okay, so here's the tabletop. It's just under 15. It's an eighth of an inch. Nope, a 16th of an inch shy of 15 inches. So happy with that. At its narrowest, I'm going to say is here. It is 20 and 7/8. So we definitely need to at least cut both edges. Maybe we need to make it 20 inches. So if I take half an inch off one side and then just trim up the other, we'll see how close to 90 degrees this is. We'll be good. Okay, so I have cut the rails to length. Now I'm going to rip them 5 inches wide for the back and the two sides. The front, I'm going to cut 3/4 by 3/4 inch two rails. What's left will actually be the drawer front, which will fit later. So basically I'll cut 3/4 off one side, 3/4 off the other side, and the middle will be the drawer. That will keep the grade lined up and it will give it the best possible look. Okay, same setup on the rotor table. We're going to take our rails, sides, front and back, and make the tenons. For the lower rail, I'm going to use the same setup and cut away all four sides. And then we'll make a small tenon that will let in with the chisel into the lower leg. The upper rail, I'm going to do differently. Okay, so the upper rail is going to remain flat on top. So I'm going to shave 3 sides at 1/16. So I've reset the bit. We'll put this in, do 3 sides. Okay, so we've got our drawer. This is the inside. So here's the outside. And the drawer is obviously too long. So we'll fix the width of the drawer face later. Set that aside for now. Got our legs. This is a front. This is a rear. So in the rear, these fit very nice. We just need to chisel out the ends. Side apron, rear apron, same thing, so nice and tight. We need to be careful of not breaking this, and as we see, we've got a bit of a break right in here right now, but the glue will fix that up and we'll clamp it. The same thing has happened on the other rear leg, just because there's not a lot of space there. They're almost joining. So carefully, let's clean up each of these joints with a chisel and certainly glue up the back so that we'll get that out of the way and stop this joint from snapping off. Okay, so my 12mm chisel fits perfect. I've got a couple 6mm here. I might use this longer one just to clean up the ends. So let's measure down the 5 inches it needs to be. Just go from the 6 to the 1. And Needs to be right there. Let's get as square as possible so this doesn't show. And actually, I'm going to use my marking gauge to mark across here 5 inches and to mark these lines. And that way I can square it up with the chisel easy. And that is dead on 5 inches. Now carefully we will mark. Okay, I'm going to use a fairly light cut with this because remember these shoulders are barely being held on. So go to the line. Do a test fit. And that will be good. That will be not visible. Basically, there'll be a bit of glue squeeze out there anyway, but it won't be visible because this is the underside. Okay, so I'll flip that over, obviously, because this is the facing side, but here's the front legs. The drawer front and the rails. So what we want to do is let these in. First thing, we'll mark 5 inches down and then up for the tenon and chisel in the tenons on the bottom legs, and then we'll work on doing a dovetail on the top rail. Okay, so we want these to be obviously the depth that they are, which is about 3/4 of an inch. We'll use a marker. Could use a marker. I'm just going to go by eye. Basically what we want to do is go from the inside to the outside. But first, I'm just going to mark the outside of the mortise. So I can see my lines better. And then we'll dig it out. And this is a good practice. Doesn't matter if your joint's not perfect, because no one's gonna see it. It's hidden inside. Bit of glue will fix it. At least you're giving it a shot. Okay, so from here, go across the center, and I'll work from the center out. This is as close as I have. I actually have a better mortising chisel. So let's use it. Okay, a little bit of work's all it takes. And there you have it. So we can try to test fit this. It needs to be a bit wider. Yeah, but we're very close. Okay, and as you get close, remember to keep test fitting. I test fitted this a couple times and it just fits now. I do need to clean up a bit on the shoulders. I'm going to get fit a bit tighter, but we'll move on to the other side. Okay, so couple problems. One problem. This, when I put it in, didn't look 90 degrees or square to the legs. It does now because I've shaved off an edge. What problem did that lead to once I glue it up? This inside edge where the drawer sits on is higher, or not 90 degrees anymore. The bottom angles up slightly by, half a degree, 1 degree, that's fine. This, it'll catch on the drawer, so I'm going to take it back out and plane off the back edge, make it 90 or a bit less. Okay, so this is the edge here that needs to come back. I'll just use the block plane. We'll pull that out and check it with the square based on the front edge we did. And it is now at 90. So we're good. We'll pop that back into place and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, next step is dovetailing the top rail into the top of the legs. So I've marked out a dovetail about 8 degrees. It doesn't matter because we'll mark the specific dovetail to the leg. And I think I'll have the same problem as before. It may not end up square, but that's all right. I'll use the block plane, square it up so it looks fine when it's assembled. Okay, so from here I've laid it out. Because I don't have a very thin curved saw, I'm just going to use a coping saw to cut the dovetail. We'll start by coming in from the sides along the line that I've marked with my marking knife. And we'll clean this up with a chisel once we're done.
On the other side.
Okay, so there's our dovetail, and now we'll mark it onto the top of each leg and fit it into place. Okay, so here is our leg. I know I'm blocking some natural sunlight. I want to try to square up where these go. Easier said than done, because that's about right. So therefore we want this one to be about here. Oh, knock the camera out. So just hold that into place. I'm going to use my marking knife. I'm going to use my pencil first, just to get an idea. And I'll mark it with a marking knife. Marking knife is much more accurate. So the pencils give me an idea. And mark that in here. And the depth, of course, is not full depth because we've taken off a sliver. So if I put this along the top in its spots, we're looking at there. Okay, so I have a line, and I'll transfer that line across with my square because it should be pretty close. And then we'll transfer our lines down the side so we can cut with a saw. Okay, so next thing, we'll square this as much as we can. I'm going to put this in here, my marking knife in the groove, and then transfer it down. Okay, so I fitted the side panel into place as well. We're not really cutting into the side panel because my dovetails are pretty short. However, it will give some support. So I'm going to cut on the angle I've marked with my coping saw, and then we'll chisel out what's left. Being careful to follow my lines both on the top and down the side. So I'm cutting in at a slight angle. I'm back to my line. So we'll just continue. So there's one done, and we'll do the same on the other side. Okay, so I'm pretty much done. Does it fit perfect? No. Does it fit all right? Yes. So I'll probably, like I said, plane off this edge to make it look more square. We'll see how it fits on the other side. But yeah, not too bad. I went too deep, but that's okay. It'll hold in place with a bit of glue. It's going to be fine. Okay, so I've done some fitting. Planed the inside edge of this. And as you can see, we're pretty much square. And I cut myself with my chisel and bled on the wood, which is not good. We'll sand that off pretty quickly. Okay, so now that we've got this far, we need to taper the legs. So the legs taper from about 1 inch down below this rail on the inside edge and the other inside face. So 2 faces are tapered. This side and this side stay 90. So we'll mark that out. I'm going to cut it on the bandsaw, and then I'll use the planer to clean it up. Hand plane. Okay, so we're going to cut the table legs on the bandsaw, the taper. Trick here is to not cut off your other line. So if I cut this side first, I would cut my line. But if I cut this taper, I still have that line to follow. So let's cut the leg, see how we go. So we'll just clean that up with the hand plane and we'll get to assembling the table. Okay, so we clamped it up. It's not quite 90 degrees, so let's just square this up a bit. Take a couple measurements. Inside to inside is 11. Inside here to inside is 11. Front to back complete is 8 5/8, and up here it is not 8 5/8 because we're out of square. Okay, sorry, 7 5/8 and 7 5/8. Okay, the drawer runners, I've cross-cut this board on the miter saw, marked 1 inch. So basically, I have 1 inch on this side of the saw. Just gonna cut 4 drawer runners. I'll have a very small bit left. I probably won't even cut the last one, or it may end up being 1 inch long. I should have 5. So let's give this a go. Okay, so we've got our 1 by 1 inch pieces. Got one here. I'm gonna stick them in place. Just mark the notch. And we'll cut that out. Okay, so the legs that were completely planed, I haven't sanded, but I have broken the edge with 120. The other panels, I've sanded on the outside and the top and bottom edges with 120 grit sandpaper, broken the edges. I'll re-sand with 240 for the parts that are getting sanded. But right now, we're just going to do a quick trial fit. Okay, so there it is, dry fit. I think it looks pretty good. The tabletop is obviously much bigger, and I'll see if I can move the top clamps and the side clamps so that we can take a look at that. Okay, so remembering the tabletop will have that chamfer on it. It'll be about this size. Place to drop your keys, throw your wallets, things like that at the front door is what my intention of it was. I think with the chamfer on the top underside, it's going to look really good. Top may be a bit big, but I don't think so. I think it works fine. Okay, so I've glued up the back. The clamps are ready to come off. Been about 30 minutes for the glue to set up. What I have realized is I'm going to have to do a bit of planing on the top there. That's okay. And I didn't clean up in there, which I can later with a chisel. So I'm going to set this aside and I'll glue up the front. Okay, pop some glue. in the joints. Okay, we've got some good squeeze out. Now we'll use damp cloth, clean up the glue, and let this set up. Okay, so we got these sides glued up, cleaned up the glue, and next step will be to work on the top. Okay, so we talked about resizing the top, and now we'll just take some dimensions here. Okay, so I did some quick math on the other side of the table and then sanded it off. This is the bottom. Decided to go 18 by 13 1/4. Okay, so next thing I want to do is to measure in 2 inches from every direction. And that will give us our angle that we'll talk about. So not on the 2 sides I cut off. On here, 3/4 inch, I measured 1/2 inch in, so 1/4 inch by 2 inches, and we'll just angle that off. Quick and probably most accurate way, set your table saw at about 7 degrees, inch your way in to the cut. My fence is not tall enough, so I'm not game to try that. I'm going to do it an old-fashioned way with some rasps and try a Sureform plane, but I haven't had much luck with it because I have a very cheap one. And so we'll probably use the rasp, take out the majority of the material, and then we'll use a hand plane to smooth up the final chamfer. The end grain I thought might be a problem, but it's actually going better. Okay, so there it is, very subtle angle, about 1/4 inch off by 2 inches in. So whatever angle that works out to be, I'm not going to do the math right now. I planed the edges again. It's looking pretty good. I am going to sand it to 240 with a foam block and a piece of 240 paper on the back and the top, and touch up some of the sides where there's a bit of tear out from the plane. Okay, so the top's been sanded 80, 120, and 240 grit by hand with a scrap but square piece of pine with the paper, and I ease the edges with the foam block and some 240 paper. So basically we'll put this aside before we clean up to get ready for finishing. We still have the drawer to do. We need to level the stand or the table to make sure it sits level. And so I'll show you a quick way to do that, or at least how I do that. Then we'll clean up the workshop and clean up all this dust on the table and the tabletop. We'll do a test fit, attach them together. And then to get some satisfaction, I'm going to finish the table before I do the drawer. So I'll put at least a coat or two of finish on. I'm going to use Scandinavian oil. So basically linseed oil or a different type of oil, but mixed with a tiny bit of varnish. So I like how it looks, and it should match a hallway bench I've already built out of some pallet wood.